Reese Erlich joins me now from Berkeley, California. He is a journalist and author of several books, including The Iran Agenda Today, the real story inside Iran and what's wrong with U.S. policy. Reese, thanks for joining us. First, I want to get to some breaking news. I want to get your reaction to reports of rockets striking an Iraqi base housing U.S. troops in the western part of the country.
Well, we shouldn't be surprised. The Iranians have said since the assassination of General Qasem Soleimani that they would respond proportionately and attack military targets. There was a lot of speculation that they might go after civilians or launch terrorist attacks or whatever, but this seems to be, if in fact it proves to be the case, that this was a military response to a military action.
And I want to get your thoughts, in Washington today, Tuesday, we saw U.S. President Donald Trump come out and say that the U.S. is prepared to attack again if needed, saying that Iran would suffer the consequences and very strongly. We also heard from the U.S. Secretary of State and the Defense Secretary today. So are they on the defense, defending their moves? And what now from the U.S. if these reports are in fact true of this rocket attack?
Well, it's very difficult to say because now the tennis ball is in the Washington's court. They could choose to de-escalate if they wanted and attempt to prevent a war from breaking out, or they can take action which they claim is going to be, I'm sure, proportionate escalation or some such terminology, and then the Iranians will respond again. So it's a very, very fraught situation. The U.S. has many military bases, tens of thousands of troops in the general region, and so there's a lot of targets. Already it's backfiring politically. The Canadians and the Croatian troops in Iraq have pulled out, and massive demonstrations have broken out, and the parliament in Iraq voted to kick the U.S. troops out. So it's having a negative impact politically on U.S. policy.
So what do you see happening next as we continue to see possible tit-for-tat actions? We had Iran's Foreign Minister Javad Zarif calling the killing an act of state terrorism. The parliament just passed a bill that labels the U.S. military as terrorists. How far could we see this go?
Well, I don't have a crystal ball, and it depends on each side making a careful calculation about hoping that their action is not going to lead to a wider war. But of course, this is how bigger wars start, and we could see a situation where the U.S. bombs the territory of Iran. Right now the war is being fought on Iraqi soil, which is one of the reasons Iraqis are so angry.
And staying in Iraq, the reports of this possible rocket attack happened in Iraq. There has been chaos, though, in Washington about this letter, this back and forth about U.S. troops remaining in the country. Is this the beginning of the end of U.S. troops in the region?
Well, the background to that is the Iraqi parliament voted 170-0 to expel all foreign troops, not just U.S. troops, but that would include Iranian troops and Croatians and Germans and Canadians and everybody else who's there. And then the Prime Minister sent the letter to the chief U.S. military officer in Iraq. So that's an official stand now, not just by the Parliament, which was a non-binding vote, but the Prime Minister has apparently endorsed it. And as to it being and then the U.S. military responded basically saying, we're going to prepare to leave. Then when that came out, it turns out they claimed it was a draft letter. But if you look carefully at the letter on the back, it's got an Arabic translation. Why would you have a draft letter in English that was already translated if it wasn't a real letter? So I think we're seeing either factional divisions within the military or between the military and the White House or something else to be explained. But the idea that it was a draft letter that was sent by mistake, I don't go for it.
How dangerous is this all, though? I mean, we also had here on Monday U.S. President meeting with Saudi Arabia's Vice Minister of Defense at the White House. Nobody knew about it. Only a few details were revealed from the Saudi side. So what was likely the topic of that discussion, and what more can we see next?
Well, obviously the U.S. and Saudi Arabia are close allies. The U.S. warned Saudi Arabia, along with several other countries, including Israel, prior to the military attack on the Hezbollah base in northern Iraq.